First game for a new manager. A lot of players wanting to make a positive first impression. A lot of players maybe who want to show the old boss that he was wrong.
Some of that.
And the derby against the team who played completely into United's hands. It was almost the perfect game for Carrick. It was the perfect way to start.
We back! Like the Denver Broncos. A dream start for Michael Carrick at Manchester United. We learned there is such a thing as an interim to the interim manager bounce. Manchester City in the mud. Arsenal grind through a Dychean world of pain. Liverpool, one of those draws that feels like a loss in a weekend which not one of the top four actually won. Villa, how did you lose to check note Everton? Oh, it could always be worse. Tottenham are officially what it sounds like when doves cry, and after one of the worst weeks in Crystal Palace history. Is that bat signal being sent off for Roy Hodgson? I'm in the greatest city of Chicago after a noble sub-zero Bears loss last night, which we will discuss, but it's a joy to welcome from Harrogate, the Chicago of North Yorkshire. It's the Crown Prince of that town, the AFCON of words. It's Mr. Rory Smith.
How you doing, Rog? How are you? And I mean that sincerely.
Raw, you know what? It's like, I think centigrade is like -8. I think it's right now it's actually 7 degrees Fahrenheit outside. It is nipple shatteringly cold. But look, I don't know if you know, because this is a football podcast, not an NFL podcast. I support terrible teams. You do know this. I support Everton. I support the White Sox. I support the Bears. And the Bears have had just a hero's journey, surprise season. March of wonder, so much so I felt compelled to bring my kids here so that we could make memories together. And rule number one, this city is buzzing, absolutely buzzing. Testament to the power of sport and what it can do for a place when a city really needs to feel great again. And then second of all, yes, the Bears lost, but even in defeat, and I know defeat so well, it's a familiar. I play chess with death on the regs, rule. But I'm not used to this defeat. It felt valiant. It felt joyous. It felt proud. It felt better to have loved than lost kind of loss, Raw. And I'm still buzzing, despite the finality of it all. Have you ever felt like that? Because I like my defeat to be a good punch in the down below. I don't like this feel-good stuff. I don't know what to do with myself.
I don't know whether I've ever had like a feel-good defeat, but there are some defeats that are easier to handle than others. I remember watching, and this is a humble brag in terms of who I support, but after the 2007 Champions League final, which Liverpool lost to AC Milan, I remember trying to going out. I wasn't there. I was at home. I was in London then. I remember going out onto my deck and just thinking, do you know what? That's okay. They got to the Champions League final. It's great to get to a Champions League final. They won it a couple of years ago against the same team. It's okay to lose sometimes, and I think I found that surprisingly easy to tolerate. Watching your team get just taken apart by Lionel Messi's Barcelona, it's really hard to object. That happened a few years later. You sometimes just have to stand back and applaud. It does happen.
Oh, I just feel to have sat with 70,000, essentially, I mean, it was like collective psychosis to stand outside in that cold and bellow for a team. You feel exhausted, you feel magnificent. At the end, I actually walked back to my hotel, about a mile and a half with thousands of other Bears fans. And the amazing thing, and no matter what sport you support or follow, you'll relate to this, even in defeat, the thousands of Bears fans as they marched off into the cold darkness of the night, season over, the finality of it all, they chanted as an army moving together, they chanted, "Green Bay sucks." Because even in defeat, what feels better than knowing that you've crapped on your rivals and someone's worse than you? It's just like a basic human need, right?
There's a victory in there somewhere, Rog. There's a victory in there somewhere.
That is it, dear listeners. Grab your victories where you can. And if it's putting down other people, children, be that small and petty, all of that, and racks of ribs at Twin Anchors. Oh, just one of the greatest restaurants in America, and a massive pie at Pequod's. Number one deep dish. It's not casserole. I am not worthy. But let's get to the football. Quickly, I want to thank you all for your incredible response to news of my forthcoming book, We Are the World Cup, a personal history of the world's greatest sporting event. Again, I'd love it, and I know this is annoying for those of you that have already done it. Number one, read the introduction. It's on our website, so you know what the book is about. It's pretty ambitious. If you listen to this show, if you watch this show, then this book is written for you with deep, deep love. And then number 2, do something as crazy and as anti-rational as standing outside for 4 hours in subarctic conditions to watch a team you love. Pre-order the book, preferably at an indie bookstore. Support your indie bookstores. And then if you upload your receipt for that pre-order with my love, because pre-orders make or break a book, I will send you, and I'm about to start signing them tonight, one of several thousand book plates that I have to give little messages on. I'll send them with your love. Upload the receipt on our website, meninblazers.com. There's a landing page, and I will send you that book plate with my love. Any suggestions, ideas, email us at meninblazers.com. But I want to start with a toast, Raw. Raising my theoretical third first Michelob Ultra of the day to Senegal, who won yesterday afternoon the African Cup of Nations at a tournament which is traditionally, I think the medical definition is loco, but even by its standards, chaos, frenzy at lunatical levels at this final. There were fights. The Senegalese players walked off the field in protest after a 98th minute penalty was quite dodgily awarded to Morocco, your hosts. They ultimately came back, I think, around 16 minutes later. Their fans were fighting security. Their substitute goalkeeper was fighting a gaggle of ball boys, which I didn't fully understand how that went on so relentlessly with no one stepping in. But then Real Madrid's Brahim Diaz scooped the penalty, a Panenka straight into the hands of Edward Mendy. Yes, that Edward Mendy cinema. Somehow, Senegal outwitted and outlasted every single attempt to make the host glorious. An exclamation point Papagay drive made the Lions of Teranga champions for the second time in 4 years. And in the end, ex-Liverpool icon Sadio Mane was hailed as a hero of the tournament. It was he who persuaded his teammates to come back onto the field. He said afterwards, later, and this was beautiful, Raw, I think it would be crazy not to play this game because what? The referee gave a penalty and we go out the game. I think that would be the worst thing, especially for African football. I'd rather lose than this kind of thing happen to our game. Raw, I mean, number one, is that rationality creeping into football? But our job is to make that make sense. Even by Spurs standards, the AFCON final was a mad one.
Yeah, it was genuinely extraordinary, and it was our mutual friend Rog, Jonathan Wilson, has been there throughout, and he said it was kind of completely at odds with the rest of the tournament, which has actually been quite boring. It's been, the two best teams making the final, Morocco and Senegal. There's not been any real standout games. And then, even before the penalty, which I think you could describe as soft, Rog, there was an equally soft decision to rule out a goal for Senegal. And I think that's important because the context is what explains what comes next. So Senegal have this goal ruled out for a bit of a push, really, in the 92nd minute on Achraf Hakimi. And I mean, maybe you've seen them given sort of situation, I suppose, but it did feel a little bit harsh. And then 5 minutes later, 97th minute of the game, you get the softest penalty imaginable given in Brahim Diaz's favour by VAR. And I think what you see in that moment is not related to Africa particularly, but football more generally, is a total lack of trust. No one on the Senegalese side there thought this is just one of those things. It's just football. Sometimes it goes for you, sometimes it goes against you. They were preconditioned to think that maybe something untoward had happened, and that's why you get the scale of that response. I don't think we've heard the end of this story. I think it's impossible that FIFA and the African authorities won't punish Senegal, their coach, Papatior, for pulling them off the pitch. There will be consequences for them. It did feel at the time as though maybe the right thing happened, but I think there will be other views on that as well, because I'm not sure it's a great precedent to be walking off the pitch at a decision you don't like.
Yeah, I mean, it had built up. There was just craziness the whole way Senegal had been treated in the run-up to the final. Grievance fell on grievance like snow on snow. But the lack of trust that you identify, I mean, we've always said football is a reflection of the world in which we live. There's a lot of lack of trust in every facet of our world at the moment. To see it expressed through football is a human darkness. There will be repercussions, but I've got to say, that goal, the ecstatic nature of it, Senegal ultimately winning, even within justice, this cosmic justice, and it felt like we saw that Sunday afternoon. Godspeed to all, especially you, Idrissa Gana Gueye, you incredible human being, and the human wonder known as Ilian Dye. If you're listening to this, talking about finals on Monday or watching this, it's the College Football National Championship, and to celebrate we are releasing a set of really, really beautiful conversations with a legend of college football, Heisman Trophy winner, national champion Jameis Winston, who also happens to be A, one of the most entertaining human beings on the planet, and B, football mad. He came in to spend some time with us. We talked about the World Cup, we talked about Lionel Messi, we talked about what he would say to the US men's national team with one of his famed pump-up speeches seconds before they kick off the tournament. All of this thanks to our good friends at Coca-Cola. I'd say Jameis is as excited as anybody for this summer to come. Coke, by the way, are giving away a ton of stuff. You can see at the end of the video how to get it, including World Cup tickets. Details all over our social. Enjoy, Jameis, people. And talking about enjoyment, let's start, Raw, at a game you were at. Manchester United 2. Manchester City 0. This is not a drill. It's the 198th Manchester derby. Really began with the storylines absolutely exploding off the field for both teams. We have to dive into them quickly. The football was frenzied, but it did begin with United once more. No European football, knocked out of both domestic cups at the first hurdle. A really bleak out, and once more going back to the future, exhuming a legend, and I use that word semi-loosely, of the past, Michael Carrick. As the interim to the interim, 12 years a winner as a player and a captain in a glorious midfield, 464 appearances, 5 Premier League titles, Champions League trophy, interim before, briefly, 2021, his management mostly in the Championship with Middlesbrough, 46% win record there over the course of nearly 3 seasons. Roy's come in to triage this dismal, directionless, really soulless, haircutless season, steady the club, 17 games left. By the way, 17 games left in our Chaos League, much can be achieved there. Really, Champions League qualification is still very much possible. But you have like that lofty dream, you have the rudderlessness front office, you have rumours of Tuchel, Carlo Ancelotti, Iraola, Oliver Glasner, of whom we'll talk a little bit more in this show. I do want to say, before he becomes just part of our furniture, part of our Premier League family, watching the debate last week about Carrick or Ole Gunnar, who's going to come into the end of the season, I was struck. We talked about this a little bit on our Friday show, just about the lack of ambition, the lack of planning, the confusion, ultimately the sadness that grips this once great club, Raw. I just felt sad. I felt a little embarrassed watching it all go down.
Yeah, and that's, to be honest, that was what was in my mind as I got to Old Trafford on Saturday lunchtime for us, that it did feel as though, you know, this is a stadium that, although I have no loyalty to it as a fan, obviously, like it's one of the great temples of European football. It's this kind of, I mean, I kind of think of it as a Death Star, to be honest. It's this place that kind of like trampled all of our dreams for a generation. It was the dominant, this cathedral of dominance. And yet it feels so kind of parochial, so small, so backward looking. And it was hard not to kind of have that sense of, well, here we go again. You know, they've found themselves in a pickle, United. They've sacked a manager without a plan. They've done that before. Mid-season. They've immediately thought, well, how do we make this better? And rather than looking at the squad and saying, well, what sort of system would work here? What sort of manager do we need? They've gone, well, we could give it to someone who kind of makes the fans feel better, who kind of has this link, increasingly frayed link to the glories of the past, who reminds them of how things used to be. And they've played that card for now the 3rd or 4th time in the last 10, 12 years, which is extraordinary. Doing it once, I think, is vaguely understandable. This might be a bit of a theme of today's show, Rog, but things can be read as a one-off in a different way to how they fit into the broader context. If you look at it just in this instance, and I think I said this on Friday as well, like, you can see why they've gone for Carrick. It does kind of make sense. But the fact that it's the 3rd or 4th time they've done it makes it clear it's a pattern, and that pattern is quite embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, it's bread and circus in the old Roman ways. Look, fans, here he is, he's back. As opposed to a strategy or even a plan B in place when Amorim has been or was teetering for over a year. And there is another element to this, because you have the kind of recycled management from the DNA, but the pundocracy is heavily, heavily Manchester United. You said earlier that there's a sense of, United, it just needs a fix and they will be back to the gold standard. The honest truth is, I am not so sure that will occur in any way, shape or form. When something is broken in our society, we like to imagine it'll all fix itself. United may never fix itself. That's a conversation for another time. But this is an example of the crazy thing. Sky Sports pundit, former United legend, Roy Keane, an incredibly entertaining human being in his new manifestation as a television host, a pundit. Stay with me here, dear listeners. He fell out a while ago with Michael Carrick's wife after she called him, stick with me here, she called him an arse, I think, on social media in 2014, 12 years ago here. He'd criticised her husband's play in a Champions League defeat. I think it was against Olympiacos. She stepped in on social media, as you do. And Carrick had the job for 2 days before Roy stuck the knife in such a Roy way. He suggested that his wife will be giving the team talks because this is a real quote. She's got a bit of a big mouth sometimes. Keane then went on Sky right before the game, took swipe after swipe at Carrick. In a very entertaining Keane way that did massive numbers on social media. But it was hard in the run-up to this game, whether Michael Carrick was playing Pep Guardiola or he was playing Roy Keane. But this is the new normal now, Rob.
Yeah, but then it is a major issue for United that is really easy to dismiss as being irrelevant to what happens on the pitch, but it conditions the atmosphere around the club, and that's the atmosphere that people are making decisions in. And there is just this endless noise and this permanent kind of sense of things aren't as good as before. And I agree with you, and it is a subject for another day. I think the issue United have got is they will recover to some extent. They'll get the right manager in, they'll sign a couple of good players, they will be better than they are now at some point. But they will never be what they once were. And at the same time as that's happening, that's an economic reality. Manchester City, going into this, had just signed Mark Gay, or were just about to sign Mark Gay, which takes their spending to over $500 million in a year. United aren't hitting a moving target, they're hitting an accelerating target. That's what they're aiming for. You have this kind of constant drip of, that's not good enough, that's not good enough, that's not good enough. You have a set of people in the media, and I understand why it happens, who basically believe that the natural order of things will only be restored when Manchester United are the dominant force in English football in the way they were in the 1990s. But that can't happen anymore.
It's like we're on a book podcast talking about when Borders Books surges back into the marketplace, or on our video podcast, which we love, Video Stores Today, where we're like, Blockbuster, just need new management and they will be... Football does not work like that. This was a 6 different coach who's taken on Pep during his decade in charge at City from Manchester United. That's the symbol of this destabilisation. And Pep here, himself trying to steady the ship. You just hit it. They had the 10-1 slapping in the FA Cup that was feel good last weekend, but it masked the truth. 3 straight draws lolloping into this one. Gahey coming on an enormous wage, reported to be $400,000 a week, which takes City spending to, I think, $1.3 billion since December 2024. Essentially an entire new team since the end of December and the last winter transfer window, when the 115 charges hearing was said to have come to an end. We're still waiting on that judgment, Raw. But it feels like we're watching almost a late, huge, enormous attempt to build a super squad for Pep Guardiola. Almost, if you want to be cynical, give him a winning farewell.
Yeah, there's kind of 2 ways of reading it. I think both are equally fair. I have no idea which one's right. Either they have decided they want to make sure that when Guardiola steps down, which, as his contract says, will be the end of next season, might be sooner than that if certain trophies come to fruition this year. It might be later if he decides he wants to stay. But they've said, right, we're going to spare no expense in building you a squad that can compete. Or they're looking at what life might look like when Pep Guardiola has gone, that they're retooling for the future that they know must arrive at some point. But their spending isn't, you have to be really careful with this, their spending isn't totally unusual in the Premier League. Liverpool spent, $650, $700 million last summer alone. Arsenal actually spent more net than Liverpool did over the summer, which gives you an idea of the scale of their spending. United habitually will spend about $300 million a summer on new players. and then they'll have to do the same again, just it won't have worked out. It's a really rich league, everyone's spending loads of money, but I do think there is a way that City are able just to do it very lightly, almost unthinkingly, that is significant. If you look at the Gay package, the fee is low because he only had 6 months left on his contract. So that means the fee is $30 million, say. My exchange rates may not be accurate, Roger. I want to make that clear. I am not a bureau de change. That's the fee, and that's the bit that gets added to this is what City have spent since last January. But there is also the agents' commission, which we are led to believe is pretty good. It's a pretty meaty commission. And then there's his wages, which could mean you're spending in total on that deal. That could be a $100 million deal to sign Mark Gay on a 5-year contract. Fee, agents' commission, wages. That's an awful lot of money. You see why they needed to do it urgently, because they started the derby with Max Allain, a 20-year-old kid, and Kusanov, who's not been an unparalleled success since joining last January in central defence. They need cover there. That's a very, very luxurious way of securing it. That's not getting someone on loan for 6 months. That is signing one of the best defenders in the Premier League on a superstar's wage.
I guess, bro, it's time we should talk about the actual game, which was frenzied, hard thought, it was sloppy, it was open. The United fans, God bless, I do admire them, how diehard, how absolute they are in the vision of past glory, the DNA, the noise for this game at Old Trafford was magic. 3 minutes in, back post, Harry Maguire rose up over Haaland, and from point blank range, smashed a slab header off the bar. In the NFL, when a kicker hits the post, when there's a doink, no one says, "Oh, that was a nearly." But in football, we do always give huge praise to the shooter, that we give them the benefit of the doubt, which always is hilarious, the sympathy we give them, and we say, "Oh, you almost did it." But man, that was honestly, it was an astonishing miss. You were there at Old Trafford. How would you describe the atmosphere, the feeling, the noise?
Well, just on the hitting the crossbar thing, the most pedantic thing you can do in football is point out that technically hitting the post or the bar is a shot off target. Which I always think feels incredibly cruel, but it is. It was a slightly weird atmosphere, to be honest. I think we spoke on Friday that the Manchester derby's strange because the roles have reversed so violently in the last 10 years that City have been the underdog for time immemorial, really, and United were this kind of titan to be shot at. And now they've so comprehensively switched places that no one really knows what to make of it. So when I walked out at Old Trafford, the two sides of the stadium, the away section and the home fans, were engaged in like a fairly full and frank debate around the 115 charges. Both sides seemed to agree that Manchester City were cheats, but they seem to have a different view on like the moral, the moral stance of that. And then this sounds really weird, but the first 2.5 minutes, City just had the ball, and you could feel this slight nervousness settle around as United looked at them and thought, hang on, oh yeah, these are better than us. That's been the problem for some time. Like that team in blue are better at football than we are. And then United get a corner, it goes in, Donnarumma I think misjudges it, Maguire leaps, gets his header off target, and suddenly something switched. And it was really interesting to see that they thought, actually we can play this as underdogs and it's okay.
And underdogs they were. Dalot escape, we have to acknowledge, he got a yellow card when he stamped down on Doku around the knee in a leg-breaking style of Euro. They were never going to send him off. When you saw it, you just knew. This early in a game this big, it was wide open, it was energised. You had Bruno absolutely up for it in the midfield. Free again, Kobe Mainu. Really relishing the fight. On the other side, you had Rodri misplacing back passes. United had the ball in the net twice offside. GFOP Glenn wrote in our magnificent Discord, most disallowed goals in the space of a single half in the first match under yet another caretaker manager. You'll never sing that. By the way, Carrick had just 3 training sessions with the boys, but you did see differences. Commitment, intensity, a sense of competitive spirit, flickering belief. It did seem different. Carrick's United, there was something tangibly different on the field. But you were there. How would you describe what you saw?
As the game wore on, Old Trafford got more and more noisy, got more and more raucous, and you could see the team feed off that. And I think within that, you have 2 or 3 players who've got a point to prove. Mainu, most of all, who's been the kind of symbol of of Amorim, the reason that the fans had given up on Amorim, that Amorim just didn't seem to want to play Kobbie Mainoo, who's supposedly one of the most talented English players of his generation. You had Fernandes in a number 10 role that actually suited him rather than having to play deeper. He looked like a man who was determined to say, look, actually, this is where I play and I'm really good at it.
This is who I am.
Yeah, this is who I am.
This is what I do.
And then even someone like Dorgu, who has been a little bit hit and miss at Manchester United, who's not really looked like he fits in anywhere, full of energy, full of running. Him and Ahmad on the two flanks. This sounds really reductive and really basic. It's the sort of thing that the former Man United players in the media say. But there is something to be said for having two really quick wingers with a number 10 passing the ball to them. That it does work and it is good to watch. And I think as that first half wore on, Old Trafford remembered what that sort of football looked like. And that's what they want. That's the sort of football they want.
Which leads us to the opening goal, because for all of City's vaunted front three, and I was excited to see them in this game, the instantly electric Semenyo, Haaland in the middle, and Doku, they were blunted. United stayed compact and fierce in time. And you mentioned it earlier, injuries meant the City backline had Kuznov at the heart and 20-year-old Max Alleyne, young prodigy, recalled from Watford. He has played fearlessly, but in this one, he had the jitters, gave City a vulnerability, almost sucked them back. Pep made changes at half-time. Cherky thrown on, Ait-Nouri. Pep's children taken off, Foden and Max Alleyne. Donnarumma was transcendent. It was an incredible spell. He blocked. Was it Ahmad and then Casemiro on the follow-up, making Casemiro do that short pull-up agony thing that he does to the camera. The Donnarumma sellies, as great as the saves. I mean, Gigi felt like he was in sex god mode. But even he was helpless. 65th minute, from a City free kick, no less. Maguire headed out, ball work to Bruno, who carried it forward. Ain't no look fed, the big bald, and Bumo back from AFCON. Sublime opening of the body to roll home with the confidence of a bad man. Stunning counter-attacking football. Can I be hyperbolic here for a second? Well, I don't like to be, you know me. But for once, the reaction from the stands at Old Trafford, this was a goal cut from Manchester United attack heritage.
It was the sort of goal that Old Trafford likes more than any other goal. That's absolutely right. The reaction was complete bedlam. And I've been to Old Trafford quite a lot recently, and it has felt unhappy and grumbling. And even when they celebrate a goal, there's a sense of kind of resignation and gritted. You sort of get the idea it's through gritted teeth, really. They're not enjoying the football. But that was partly because of the opposition, but partly because of the style of the goal. It was sheer unalloyed delight at the sight of something that I think they want more than anything else, which is that sort of sense of watching Manchester United flow forward, devastating, fast, decisive. They will feel that's what's been missing for a long, long time.
Yeah, and this was against City, vaunted City, but in 23 games, all comps, just 2 clean sheets. I was like, oh my God, if they brought in Guéhi after the last set of results, who are they going to bring in this midweek? Will it be Harry Kane, Lamine Yamal, and the great Beto all incoming? But it would get worse for Manchester City. 76 minutes, Cunha just ran past O'Reilly, drove the ball over. Dorgu, only player alert to the football happening, as the City backline was so flat-footed, lost and bedraggled in that moment. He charged past Rico Lewis, who was statuesque, and slammed really a dagger of an obsidian blade past Donnarumma. It was stunning football again, red, rapturous theatre. City's faces in that second, if you look at the players, just shock. Do you not know who we are? It all looked like across their faces. But for United, the joy, the surging sense of self. Gary Neville on British comms instantly called it probably the best 77 minutes we've seen for years on this ground, which is a little bit recency bias, but raw vibes.
Yeah, but to be honest, it's not far off. And I mean, I haven't watched as much of Manchester United over the last few years as Gary Neville will have done, but it was far more comprehensive, far more compelling, far more like coherent the way they played than I've seen them for years and years and years, and the crowd really fed off that. And in those last 15-20 minutes after the second goal, they tore Manchester City apart. City looked completely shocked and totally unable to work out how United were hurting them or how to make it stop.
Which was the astonishing part, that the defencelessness of City, also that they could barely cock a fist to strike back, Raw. I think they barely had a sniff Was it 1 attempt on goal? This is their biggest XG defeat ever, which means everything and nothing. Haaland pulled off the optics of that in the 80th minute, just 14 touches. Remarkable in itself. I mean, he has more battles to fight, there is no doubt, but 7 games all comps, is it now, without a goal? I've got to say, since he became a YouTube influencer, dude has dropped off, Raw. It's hard to be.
Is he getting distracted by content creation?
I don't know. Or is the football getting in the way of the content creation? I don't know. I do know it's hard to be a beast on the field and Mr. Beast off it. In truth, Gent looks like so many of his teammates right now. You know, Pep likes a smaller squad. They look utterly fatigued. I will say about Haaland, or let me frame this as a question: is it unfair to point the finger at him? 7 games without a goal, the handful of touches in this one, when Gent has scored more goals than whole teams this season.
Yeah, and also you ordinarily when strikers are in droughts, Rod, you look at the supply lines, don't you? And against United in particular, Haaland was not provided with any chances. Not really. There was one sort of vaguely dangerous moment where I think he managed to get a shot off and it was blocked, but he wasn't in the game. I suppose that's kind of the pact that Pep's made, though, isn't it? That this is the first Pep Guardiola team we've ever really seen that is built to service one man, where that one man is not Lionel Messi, and Haaland is kind of not. It's not that Haaland sits outside the system. It's the system is Haaland. It is get the ball to Haaland, and he will score you lots and lots of goals, unapologetically so. And I think that it's probably fair to criticise a little bit when the player for whom everything is designed does not deliver. And that's basically what's been happening, not just at Old Trafford, but over the last 7 games for him. And that's now 3 draws and 1 defeat in 4 games for Man City. That's not that good.
Yeah, I mean, that is sending Pep spiralling back to that dark place. As you say, points now dropped in 4 straight league games. All the talk beforehand was of City being 6 points back from Arsenal. Same time 3 years ago, they ended up romping the title by 5 points. That talk suddenly seems very, very empty and hollow, because Manchester United on this day deliver a victory for the ages, slightly hyperbolic. 2 goals, hit woodwork twice, 3 disallowed goals, was it? 2 worldy Donnarumma saves. I said up top, we learned there is something called the interim to the interim new manager bounce. We've got to brace ourselves this week for a lot of talk of Manchester United being back. Carrick deserving the job on a permanent basis, of DNA being the thing that will lift the club back to the Champions League promised land. First of all, Raw, I do need to ask you, how crazy should we allow ourselves to get? Will we allow ourselves to get? Do we need some grown-up perspective here, or is that overrated? Should we say, lads, it was just 1 game? Let's see a more consistent body of work, should we, before we lose our bloody minds? Or should we just submit to the emotions and declare United back?
Logically, Rog, we should look at it and say, first game for a new manager. A lot of players wanting to make a positive first impression. A lot of players maybe who want to show the old boss that he was wrong.
Some of that.
Derby, which obviously changes things, and a derby against a team who played completely into United's hands. As I say, in those last 15, 20 minutes, City just pushed on and on and on without really pressing, without really trapping United into corners. And every time it took United 1 ball to break out and streak away down towards the Stretford end. And they scored once, they had 1 ruled out, they hit the post, and there were 2 or 3 other chances that they could easily have added to the scoreline. All of that makes you think, yep, absolutely logically, need to see a broader body of work. It was almost the perfect game for Carrick. It was the perfect way to start. On the flip side, Manchester City are spending an awful lot of money. They spent, $500 million in a year. You can't catch them up by outspending them. They have Pep Guardiola. You probably can't catch them up by outthinking them. You certainly can't do either of those 2 things quickly. So why not see if magic will do it? That's what I came away thinking. Well, is there really any harm in saying there is no actual way to do this? We can't physically find a strategic way forward that will close the gap to not just City, but Arsenal, Chelsea, all the others. Maybe just see if DNA works. Maybe it will. Maybe it will work for long enough that it gives United a long-term bounce back to roughly where they need to be.
Oh, I've always been in the pro-magic lobby, Raw. I love that. I do wonder if Ruben Amorim watched that game and what he experienced as he watched it. This perfect start for Michael Carrick. Must have been so humanly good for him to walk around Old Trafford, redemption, finger to the haters, just a brilliant joy for now, for at least one day. It doesn't get any easier. Arsenal away next. Roy, I've got to ask you, one quick danger coming, possibly, if he is too successful. Carrick's already refused to rule out becoming Manchester United's permanent head coach at the end of the season, first press conference. GFOP Jack Height in DC wrote a great letter into our mailbag, and it will become pertinent, I think, if Carrick does land Champions League qualification for Manchester United. He writes, how many weeks until Carrick's given a permanent contract, and what month next year will he be fired?
Yeah, that is a great question, and part of the test of United's seriousness will be, can they resist it? But the flip side again of that is, if he does a good job, if the players like him, if he plays the sort of football that gets the fans on side, if he gets results, it is possible that Michael Carrick could be a good Manchester United manager. They have appointed every type of manager. They have tried everything. None of them have worked. So yeah, logically, again, you'd say, wait for Tuchel, wait for Glasner, wait for Pochettino, whoever it might be. Iraola's been the coming man in the Premier League for ages. But it is possible that the right person is Michael Carrick. That is not something you can rule out. It's not what I would do, Rog, but it may well be the right answer.
Bring on next weekend. By the way, we don't have time to get into this, but it is mad that in victory, United player Sandro Martinez had to instantly address comments by former United legends Paul Scholes and Nicky Butt, who mocked his size. And it said something like Haaland would pick him up and throw him into the net. He had to say this is a real quote from a real professional footballer after a Manchester derby. I told him, Scholes, already, if he wants to say something to me, he can come to me whenever he wants, to my house, wherever. I mean, this is not really what football, it's not really what the world needs now. I just say Godspeed. From the chasers to the league leaders, Nottingham Forest 0, Arsenal Football Club 0. Well, how are the turntables? This fixture last time, I think, was a battle between second and third last season now. Arsenal had the chance to go 9 points clear of Manchester City at the top of the table. And West Ham's win at the other end at Dr. Tottenham, of which we will speaketh, meant the Hammers had already closed the gap to Forest to just 4 points. Arsenal tried to rest Saka and Trossard after their Carabao exertions midweek, perhaps to protect them from a Dyche kicking. This game was very much sought on Dychean terrain. Elliot Anderson was superlative and everywhere. It was a stalemate, a muscle, a grapple. It reminded me of one of those UFC ground battles. Forest fought hard. They were obstinate. They were punishing. They reduced the game to one of duels, a mud fight, a slog for Arsenal. I think it was probably an epic world of pain for your league leaders. Martinelli missed the most clear-cut chance, squared the ball impotently from close range. Gyökeres let in on a one-on-one by Murillo, who then kind of joyously, I'd say, snuffed the Swede out, almost emasculated him. When you watch Gyökeres right now play, I mean, you're not really watching him. You're really thinking, my God, the defending in the Portuguese league must be truly, truly terrible. But there's a faction of Arsenal fans, I'm really fascinated by this, who so desperately want Gyökeres to start cooking. We released a couple of interviews with Bukayo Saka this week. They're on our YouTube right now. There were so many comments in the chat about how Saka, who's an ebullient joy, a difference maker in this game, by the way, when he came on, but just like, you need to start passing the ball to Gyökeres. Be good to Gyökeres, man. Gyökeres, the honest truth, still looks like a lost boy in this league. But the Saka-Gyökeres narrative, it almost feels like a fan base willing, desperately, their big summer buy to be the person they dreamt of.
Yeah, I think it's tricky, isn't it? There's lots of ways to like football, Rog, and you can watch football, we've talked about this before, you can watch it tactically, you can watch it as a soap opera, you can watch it because you like the way it reflects the darkness of the modern world. Like, there's lots of ways to like football. And one of them is transfers. And people become surprisingly attached to players that they are delighted their team has signed. And I think we're all guilty of it to some extent. Maybe not guilty is not even the right word. That, you want the big signing to do well. You want the signing to have made a difference. And I think that loyalty can be admirable. I find it a bit odd, I won't lie, when I see on my timelines skew Liverpool just a touch, Rog, and the the transactionality of how people talk about players I find really odd. Like, I get quite emotionally invested in players' journeys. The way that people are willing to discard them is alien to me. With Gyökeres, I suppose it's positive that there are Arsenal fans there who are just willing him to do well. I suppose what might be the problem is that at some point that might turn, and when it does turn, it might turn quite sour quite quickly. There's a lot of emotion there, and if he doesn't live up to it, he might have an issue. I think, given Arsenal's lead position, there is also a tendency to look for a problem where maybe there isn't one. Gyökeres is kind of doing a job for Arsenal. It was a lot of money to get someone to do that job, but he is kind of doing a job for Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, I will say Kai Havertz cannot become fully fit quick enough. And I think the goals will come for Gyökeres, I've no doubt about it, but possibly only when he starts alongside Timo Werner for your San Jose Earthquakes, which is how he's looking right now. By the way, Arsenal look fatigued in the face of Forest resilience in this game. The 3-game week is incredibly tough, even with that depth in that squad. Unleashing, you saw it, Saka, Jesus, and then a couple of minutes later, Eze came off the bench, and you're watching this, and it just reminded me of that Rog and Rory quote, that the Premier League is not knights on horseback, it's a number on a piece of paper, it's a fight for a night in the mud. That's what this game was. I did wonder whether the quadruple, that Carabao semi-final, playing such a full-strength side in that, ultimately that quadruple chase might be their greatest challenge right now.
Yeah, it's a choice that Arteta's going to have to make, because for all the depth that they have, which is by far the most kind of complete squad in the Premier League, and I would say the most complete squad in Europe, the level of fatigue that everyone is dealing with is extraordinary, and you see that throughout the league now. You will start to see it throughout the Champions League as well. That teams are playing 8-9 games in January. That's a lot, especially those teams in the Carabao. So Arteta at some point will have to try and give some of those players a bit of a break. And we saw it against Forest, right? He didn't start Saka. Dropping Saka for a resting Saka for a Premier League game is a fairly big call. I guess maybe the way he looked at it is, look, the Carabao is one more game, and then you've got a final, that's a trophy. The FA Cup, you could potentially play a few more reserves. They should get a break around the Champions League, as they will qualify in the top 8. So maybe he thinks that they can do it. My guess is the problem, that the flick in the tail, will be latter stages of the Champions League. That's when the fatigue really starts to tell.
God bless. Saka did actually come on. He made a real difference. I'm only saying that because the header, the flicked header, the Celt save was really magnificent from such a cunning, audacious attempt. Celts becomes only the second keeper to keep a clean sheet against the Arsenal after Alisson, who's done it twice. That's just me trying to make you feel good, beautiful. Arteta left a fume about a penalty not given on Ola Aina for handball. Honestly, for me, watching that felt like misdirection. There was a lot of frustration. Penalty, yes, seen them given, especially against Everton all the bloody time. But the real frustration probably was with that front line, his own front line. They were blunt, disappointing. And I think the context for this game was probably the biggest frustration. Manchester City dropping points, Arsenal dropping the chance to get over the hills and far away. That City implosion and the knowledge they didn't capitalise. That was probably the biggest driver of the frustration, and the awareness that, hello, my old friend, the low block, that is going to be the steady diet Arsenal going to have to face and break down all season. To me, this was not a terrible result, Rule. I mean, this title is now going to be won inch by inch. But it feels like every single Arsenal fan is caught between we are effing crap and solid point on the road. It's like that emotional and the rational again.
But it's the context, like you say, Rog. So the result itself is not a bad result. The City ground is difficult. Forest are tough to play. They are the sort of side who will be maybe more impressive against the top 6 than against teams in mid-table. I don't think, I think it's perfectly feasible that Forest will play Fulham or whoever and be very poor. But against the top 6, they're a tough nut to crack. It's a good point. Just take it and move on. But in the last 2 weeks, City have dropped 5 points, and Arsenal could have put those 5 points, could have put another 4 into them, and they haven't. They could be 11 points clear. That's how they'll look at it. That if they straw once against Liverpool and straw once against Forest, then they are suddenly 11 points clear, and the title race is maybe not over, but it's starting to feel a lot more relaxing. The fact that they haven't is why there is a degree of frustration for Arteta and for the fans.
Instead, they failed to win their last 2 games in the league on the trot, but some have extended their lead to 7 points. We have Jury and Timber joining me on YouTube on Tuesday. Do not miss that, Anne Hathaway. Let's touch upon a game of joy for Chelsea fans and fans of the English office. Chelsea 2, Brentford 0. The very first Premier League game for Aura Farmer / coach Liam Rosenior. This man is quite fascinating, Ross. Somehow, like we've talked about him last week, how he's like the last starfighter plucked out of obscurity to meet a global moment, save the club. But second, he seems to be doing it with a fairly high-risk tactic, but my God, it'll be high reward if he comes off. He's got this like postmodern self-awareness. He's briefing the press, or somebody's briefing the press, that Liam uses Lego as a team bonding exercise. You hear that and you're like, oh my God, Cole Palmer must be in heaven. There are other nuggets. There's an incredible Daily Mail deep dive, and a lot of this detail comes, the club briefed the journalists. It's how it's worked. There's a line, Liam Rosenior is not wearing gloves in training, so the players can hear his applause when he sees something he likes. There's a video doing the rounds of him from when he was in Ligue 1, dropping such, I can only call it psychobabble on David Brent-esque levels. This is a real quote. In English, manage, if you split the two words, is man, and age. So you're aging men. That's really got to be your focus. It's almost like they're trying to goad the English media. At Badwall9 summed up Liam Rosenior's personality by tweeting, Liam Rosenior, he closes the fridge with his hip.
That's very good. Yeah, the idea that he's postmodern is really interesting. Because my main reaction, as most British people's reaction will be, is to be very cynical about that sort of high performance Mark Wahlberg's daily routine like thing. He's a bit like
Liam Rosenior waking up in the morning and washing his face with those blue fizzy waters.
Or like the guy whose name I can't remember who like dipped his face in an ice bath and sat at a desk doing something.
Yeah,
and it feels very
He's
much
the Liver
like
King.
It's a little bit live, laugh, love, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
There's that kind of vibe going on, and I don't want to speak for my nation. Most British people don't like that stuff. We find it really cringe. But it's possible. And as you say, Rosenior, after the game against Brentford, came out and said, we've got Lego later. He's kind of leaning into it. And there is something quite knowing about him. So that briefing, as you say, will have come from someone at Chelsea or someone close to Rosenior or someone close to one of the players. It has come from somewhere. No journalist sits down and thinks, could we say that Liam Rosenior is doing Lego with the players? That's not how it works. It's not invented.
No journalist notice, hang on a minute, I'm watching training. He's not got any gloves on.
Exactly.
That gets briefed in. You're like, okay, good nugget. This is how he's creating change.
Not necessarily by the club. It could be someone around him. It could be someone around the club. It could be someone around one of the players. But someone is telling the journalist that stuff.
Could be the big glove lobby trying to attack him, bring him down. We can't have this catching on.
It could be that there's some sort of thing around it being better for you as a human not to wear gloves, and they want Liam Rosenior to be the face of it, or the hand of it, I suppose. Anyway, or it could be, look, the chances are it's someone from one of those camps, and they are doing it to make Rosenior look good. A lot of managers are really reticent to acknowledge that stuff, especially early on. Normally, the bit where the managers tell you they're reading the papers or reading the press or reading the websites, that comes 5 to 7 days before the sack, because it's the sign that they've lost control. The fact that Rosenior's like leaning into it is, that's interesting. It's
almost
surrealist
sort of
performance
art, and you have to win. It's the high risk. It's like putting a noose around your neck and then winning. It is high risk. It's 4 a.m. club. This is who we are. But did you see the latest win? And a tricky first assignment in front of a lukewarm, it has to be said, Chelsea crowd, who I think still need to be convinced. The Bees unbeaten in the last 6 Premier League games before this one, and they opened up. As such, the form team, Kevin Schade sending Trevor Chalobah for a cup of coffee, should have scored, decided to pass rather inexplicably, and Brentford were punished for their wastefulness within 5 minutes. Fernandes charged down Coyote's clearance, the ball ricocheted to João Pedro, whose instinct was magical. First touch into space, second touch blasting the ball. Pedro suddenly looking like a man who suddenly is reborn. A man who understands the roots of the word management are actually man and age. Why didn't I know that? We were then treated to the sight of Rosenior sending notes onto the field via Garnacho to Enzo. Raw again, making it about him in this moment. What do you think that note said?
Try to pass.
The eyes are the window to the soul.
They might have said live, laugh, love.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought. That's why I was laughing. That was like my first instinct. It was just like, lads, live, laugh, love. Come on, be the change you
It
wish
might have
to
been
see
Mark
in the
Wahlberg's
world.
daily routine.
Yes, it was like amazing. SPS Scouser DTX in our Discord thought Rosinia scribbled, I have nothing to say, but make it look like I wrote something really important. All right, whatever. I'm not sure Garnacho read it because he then whiffed a close-range poke right after with the goal gaping. Chelsea had no clean sheet in 8 games going back to mid-December. Brentford was so dominant in this game. This will be forgotten to history as we revel in Lego talk. But they dictated play. They had chance after chance. They went back to front. They charged through the gut. Sharda one-on-one with Slapstick King, Robert Sanchez, and he was slapstick no more. Repelled it beautifully with his foot. Criminal Costa at Ben tweeted, to be fair, Rosinia said he wanted to see wave after wave and after wave of relentless attacking football at Stamford Bridge, but he never actually specified the club. And Brentford's dominance was so clear. It was agonising to the Chelsea fans. It was just wasteful finishing after wasteful finishing, which kept this close. Every Chelsea fan I knew was braced for the worst, but football makes such a fool out of all of us. There was a rare Chelsea foray forward. Kelleher took a heavy touch, was challenged by the freshly on Liam Delap, who he brought down, and Cole Palmer resisted the urge to Panenka, sending the keeper the wrong way clinically. Noticeably did not celebrate. Furious, I guess, at his own play in this one. That was it. 2-0, 2 shots on target, 2 goals for Chelsea. Somehow they come away with the 3 points. I'd say, Raw, it wasn't convincing, but it is a results business. And I've got to say, every single win right now for Rosinia is credibility in the bank. That's ultimately all that bloody matters, I think. The credibility is as important as the points gleaned right now.
100%. I couldn't put it better, Rog, that he needs to win games, ideally in some sort of style, but just needs to win games to build up a body of work to say, I can do this. That's what the fans will be looking for, is can this man get results, get a tune, can he operate in this league? I agree with you. I don't think Chelsea fans particularly are convinced by Rosenia. I think his connection to Bluto is a problem. I think they feel as though the ownership, the hierarchy, whoever it is that's making these decisions, are not doing it in a way that the fans fully understand. Rosenia just needs to win games, because if he can get to May, the summer, and Chelsea are in the Champions League, and he's won far more than he's lost, then he can point at what he's done and say, look, I can cope with this. And at that point, they might start to think, okay, we can give him a chance. But it's going to take a while for him to win them over, I think.
Yeah, Lego, gloves, Post-it, steady diet. That serious question, quick one though. I'm watching Real Madrid fling Alonso overboard. You know, we're watching an interim there. We're watching an interim to the interim at United. We're watching the Rosinia experiment. Are we in a post-management world? Crazy question. We talk about how this game has just been reduced to one of duels. There's less tactical analysis because the games are packed so close together. And it has just become about duels, fights, and management matters less than ever.
Yeah, plus front offices are more and more powerful, and owners don't necessarily want to kind of have to reshape their teams, their clubs, their squads around some guy's vision that might not work. So yeah, I think the era of the all-powerful visionary manager, the kind of guru manager like Guardiola, that might be past, I think.
God, modern football, everyone wants an interim baby. To the dark place. Tottenham 1, West Ham 2. I wrote in my Friday newsletter, The Raven, that the prospect of this game was kind of like thinking about a fight between a wet noodle and a teardrop. And in this one, the teardrop won with a 93rd minute stunner from Callum Wilson, one-away Callum Wilson prodding home from a corner to send the away fans into ecstasy. Massive 3 points for West Ham, who were chasing Forest to try and get out of the relegation moon door. Profound existential levels of agony for Tottenham Hotspur, despite the debut of poor try-hard Conor Gallagher. The football was neurotic, anxiety-filled slop. This is the second weekend on the run. This is an agony that they have lost to a 90th minute plus winning goal. The predicament, Raw, can really only be summed up by every single West Ham fan I know texting me to say some version of, oh my God, Spurs is a toxic club. We just hate our board. Spurs fans are angry at their players, They're bored. Their players are angry at the fans. Everyone seems to hate the manager. Raw, West Ham are well run in comparison.
That is maybe pushing it a little bit, but there are more similarities between these two teams than either like the table or our expectations of them would suggest. They are basically going through the same thing, and it is a total lack of direction, of purpose, of identity. Like they are both. It's hard to think of two more miserable clubs in European football.
Yeah, I mean, there is Dr. Tottenham, of which we joke, but this was really like. I mean, this was if House was playing Dr. Tottenham in this one, because losing to West Ham is just next level generosity, next level healing, and I do believe this will cost Thomas Frank his job. But for the complete inability to make decisions right now at Tottenham Hotspur, serious decisions in the post-Dan Levy world are incredibly difficult, because there's chaos within chaos, wheels within wheels. The front office is changing. You have one co-sporting director. Yeah, this is a thing. A co-sporting director leaving. Fabio Paratici. The appointment of Carlos Rafi Mawson coming in as director of football operations on Thursday, and the Spurs' new chief executive Vinay Venkatesham had to apologise in the match programme for, quote, the gap between where we are and where we want to be. That gap is currently being filled, we've talked about it at length, by booing at half-time, at full-time, by Pedro Porro cupping his ear to his own fans when Spurs did score to equalise, by giddy West Ham fans singing, "It's happening again, it's happening again." Oh my God, when they netted the winner. Spurs fans making their opinion known, singing "You're getting sacked in the morning" to their own manager. Or this is chaos, it's theatre of darkness and absurdity. It's a club in stasis. Almost a culture clash between the negativity of the manager on the field and the perceived way that Spurs play, I mean, which is entertaining, forward football, and the club board that's in limbo, is it, just to a new era. The agony really is of just another season wasted, piling on, on top of the sad flatulence of the end of the poor Ange Postecoglou wilt. It feels like a club with a punctured lung, Raw, just crying out for a reset to the reset to the reset.
Yeah, and as we said of Manchester United, obviously, Spurs and United operate on with different historical contexts, Rog. But it's hard to see how Tottenham get out of this, because hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I don't think when Thomas Frank came in, Spurs fans were broadly of the view this guy's not good enough. I think most Spurs fans, some won't have been especially enthused by the appointment of Frank. I think that's probably fair to say. They might have looked at him and thought, okay, this is a little bit of a mid-table Premier League appointment. But I think the vast majority of Spurs fans looked at it and thought, he's done really well at Brentford. He's not going to kind of make us totally vulnerable to an ideology like Postecoglou. He's more pragmatic. He can get more out of the squad. He will make us more obdurate and more defensively sound. And yeah, maybe a little bit less exciting. But Thomas Frank's Brentford didn't play bad football. I don't think they were expecting 7-8 months later to be booing him and demanding that he be sacked. And I'm the same as you. I don't really see how Thomas Frank can survive this long term, and I find that desperately sad. But I also don't see who they can appoint to make it a huge amount better.
After talking about Tottenham, Raw, this will not hurt half as bad. Liverpool won. Burnley.
What a point, Rog. What a point.
Yeah, let's focus on the positive. Burnley won. Liverpool entered in an oddly unglamorous run of 11 games, unbeaten, 6 wins, 5 draws in that period. But still the pretense, I think that's the word, of stability after that rocky start that scuppered their title hopes. In come the visitors. Patsy, relegation zone Burnley, hadn't won in 12 top flight games. Liverpool, no surprise, totally dominated the opening exchanges. The football was better, but only really in comparison to what it has been. Dom Szoboszlai had a comedy penalty, which he smashed, murderously off the bar, so hard that it bounced back about 10 feet behind the players following up. But 7 minutes later, Ekitike created slop, Curtis Jones pulled it back, and Florian Wirtz took a touch and lashed one past Dubravka into the Burnley net. 1-0. Raw, Vert. We talked earlier about the Gyökeres narrative, willing it, desperate to claim this is a day that Verts became president. But Raw, 6 goal contributions in his last 7 games, better on Saturday, does seem to be developing a real connection with Ekitike. All the memes that mocked his opening exchanges in the season. Where are we? Very quickly. Florian Vert.
Yeah, I still think there's a little bit of a question mark because Liverpool's recent run has been against relatively lowly opposition, Rog, and we're yet to see Verts maybe dominate a game against an elite Premier League team in that way, although he was good against Arsenal. But I'm relatively comfortable offering that constructive feedback because I think I have been fairly consistent on saying that you could see Florian Verts was a really good player, even at the point where the 007 memes were happening. He might not have been scoring or creating goals directly, but when he did play, he looked excellent. And he's now starting to add a bit of end product to that. So yeah, he's been really good for a month, 6 weeks. He is a rare bright spot in an otherwise terrible Liverpool team to watch. But he maybe won't have truly arrived in that sense until you see him, dominate a game against Manchester City.
I want to pick up on that, Ro. I do need to acknowledge that Burnley, even in this terrible run, have played with incredible fight. They came out of that second half as if JJ Watt had distributed Whataburgers himself at half-time. And Liverpool, 73% possession, I think 32 shots they peppered. But their motif in this middle part of the season, they cannot prevent themselves from being vulnerable in moments. 65th moment, after a lovely piece of Benet and hot tick-attacker, Marcus Edwards fired into Alisson's far post to level the score. Liverpool did have chances down the stretch, but this was really a hard-earned point for Burnley, one which catalysed boos at Anfield from the home fans. And Arne Slot, post-game, said, "I understand the booing." Part of me is like, yeah, I understand the booing. They become the first champions to fail to win at home against any of the newly promoted sides with this draw. But Raw, you did win the title last season, and man, that was pretty bloody good to experience. Liverpool is a weird reality. The unbeaten streak is now at even dozen. But it's such an ersatz winning run. You have draws to Leeds at Burnley littered in. Feels like we're watching when we did medieval history as kids. They talk about the farmers inventing a year of fallow fields to make the field become verdant again. We're almost in a fallow period.
I think the problem is the opposite. I think the sense is that yes, they're unbeaten in 12, and clearly they have got better from the point where they lost. I think at one point they'd lost 9 in 12, Liverpool. And I think there is a groundswell of gratitude and like folk memory of winning the title. There is understanding that Liverpool are operating, as we've said every time we talk about Liverpool this season, Rog, Liverpool are operating in very unusual circumstances and have been for all of the season so far because of what happened in the summer. I think most fans understand all that stuff and would tolerate a fallow year if they could see what the purpose of it was. The issue with the type of football that Slot has been playing, it's not clear how you're going to use it as a building block for something else. It looked an awful lot like practical, pragmatic football designed to make games very low event kind of spectacles where you hope the margins fall in your favour. Then they're slow, they're ponderous, they seem deliberately slow at times, to be honest. They're not great to watch. They're not drawing games 3-3 because they're defensively vulnerable, but you think, do you know what? When we can solve that problem, they're going to be electric going forward. They had 32 shots against Burnley. Their XG, I think, was up towards 3 or 4. They deserve to win that game. That game in itself was not the problem. Sometimes you get a game where you have loads and loads of shots and you just can't score the second goal and the opposition get an equaliser, and it happens. And, fair play to the opposition in that situation. The problem is that game comes on the back of a 0-0 draw at home to Leeds, on the back of conceding a 97th minute equaliser to Fulham, drawing at home to Sunderland, drawing at Leeds. You've had 3 or 4 months now of unconvincing results with unattractive performances, and there does come a point where the fans are thinking, I'm not quite sure where this is going anymore.
I think that's fair. I will say the dark side to taking a league by storm is that the storm ultimately becomes the benchmark. Everything you've just said about what Liverpool are, ponderous, slow, hoping to win by small margins. As an Everton fan, I'm like, you've just described what we aspire to be, and I love it. Give me more. But let down the side. You end the weekend in 4th, 1 spot ahead of United. Head to Marseille in the Champions League on Wednesday. Also this, Mo Salah coming back from AFCON, which is going to be interesting. Honestly, feels like the return of an incredibly divisive television series that has taken years off and is coming back to our screens. But let's dive into a real unravelling, almost the unravelling, and it pains me this. Sunderland 2, Crystal Palace 1. Sunderland back to winning ways for the first time since that sizzling Newcastle win in mid-December. Up to 9th, 2 points off the Champions League places. Came from behind here to extend Palace's downwillness run to 10 games, all comps. Goals from the sizzling Enzo Lefebvre, Brian Brobby. But the real focus here, not on their excellence, it's on Palace's worst week ever. Before the game, the news, I think Palace fans had emotionally braced themselves for, rationally, but emotionally tried to tell themselves it would never happen. It came to be. Oliver Glasner confirmed he would leave at the end of the season after news captain Mark Gahey was going to move to Manchester City broke. This in a week which began with the humiliation of FA Cup third round exit at the non-league Macclesfield. Well, this was, I mean, I'm an Everton fan, but this was honestly heartbreaking because I am old enough to remember 235 days ago, Palace shocking Manchester City at the delirious Wembley, lifted their first trophy. Was it 120 years? Eze scoring, Gahey leading, Glasner inspiring, Europa League beckoning, and now it's all gone. We'll get into Glasner in one moment. But there was a tweet from @Benny who wrote, I feel the wife's left and she's took the kids and then came back for the dog. Big picture. What does this moment teach us about aspiring in the Premier League from that mid-table? Are you eventually just going to get picked apart to a carcass, stripped for parts by those above you in the food chain? And also that you should enjoy success in that fleeting moment.
Yeah, that's maybe the positive way to take it, Rog, is to say that if you get those moments, you have to cherish them. You have to treasure them for as long as you can because they are really rare and it will fall apart pretty quickly. I think the speed with which Palace has unravelled is distressing, but maybe not as much as the fact that a little bit of it seems self-inflicted. That if the club could have maybe convinced Glasner in the summer that they met his ambitions, maybe he'd be happy to stay. All right, maybe you're going to lose Mark Gay, but if you got a couple of extra reinforcements in that gave the fans reason to believe that things might be better, that would help the mood around the place as well. It does feel a little bit like they kind of achieved this glorious golden moment, and then they forgot that you have to kind of kick on from there, that they forgot that football doesn't stop. And I think that is maybe where the pain for the fans comes from. They will have expected Eze to go. They will have expected Gay to go. And I think to an extent, like you say, they might have known Glasner wouldn't be there forever. But for it to happen so quickly is upsetting.
Oh, as Joni Mitchell sang, and she would have been proper Palace. Don't we always seem to know that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? We've got to talk Glasner and acknowledge there are now massive doubts about the future of the club. Jean-Philippe Mateta, 18 months I think left on his contract, linked to Juventus amongst other places. Adam Wharton linked to everybody who loves exquisite football. But post-game, in an outburst, Glasner went nuclear on his team and a lack of incoming transfers since the FA Cup win. I saw a team that left their heart on the pitch. We couldn't make any subs. We have no one on the bench. We've been completely abandoned. Angry also that Gahey was sold on the eve of the game rather than after. He said Crystal Palace are fine to the end of the season like this with Oliver Glasner, with another manager. I don't know. Raw. Palace have briefed since then that they are not going to sack Glasner despite the finger in the eye outburst after the game. But this was, I think the adjectives are, it was very Maresca-y, it was very Amorim-y.
Yeah, and that feels significant as well, doesn't it? That you've suddenly got three managers in the space of about 3 weeks who've gone to war with their clubs. That's not normal. That is a new development for the Premier League, that managers now have a go at their executives. There was a point on Sunday where it looked like Thomas Frank and Oliver Glasner were going to get sacked on the same day, which would have made this a more interesting podcast, Rog. The slightly more reactive. I don't know whether it's... I don't know how sustainable it is to have a manager who's that unhappy at a club. Does everyone kind of muddle through to the end of the season? What does that do to morale in the dressing room? What does it do to results? What does it do to a season that could potentially still contain glory? Palace are the favourites for the Conference League. Is that how you want to get through? Is there a way of placating Glasner a little bit if they don't spend a little bit of money in the next 2 weeks? Could that improve his morale? It just feels so... it feels such a come down after everything that they've done in the last year and everything they've given us as like a football culture more broadly.
As human beings, even.
Yeah.
The 3% of us that is human. I couldn't agree more, Raw. I don't know. These firings, I can't... How are we even going to talk about them when we've got to talk about which manager's wife's got a big mouth and who's going to come and fight Martinez in his house this week? I mean, that's the serious stuff. That's
the real business.
Yeah, we don't have room for this stuff. At Kevin Hunter Day tweeted, meanwhile, somewhere in South London, Mrs. Hodgson is hiding her husband's tracksuit and telling him to come away from the door because no one sends telegrams anymore. Oh my God. Roy coming back again. I'm interested. In other games, Leeds won. Fulham 0. Leeds won the battle to prove they are the one true lily white overachieving team this season, puncturing Fulham's 6-game unbeaten run, courtesy of a 91st minute lash from Lucas Mecha, who stepped off the bench to deliver a crescendo on a quite emotional day in which Leeds honoured the passing of Welsh 1970s giant Terry Yorath. Leeds now 8 points clear at the Premier League relegation zone. I think they might be staying up, Raw. Mecha's goal came less than 3 minutes after a Leeds fan, Kenny, told Discord chat Mecha was, quote, going to drive me insane with his piss poor play. I said earlier, Raw, football's greatest gift. It does remind us all, we know nothing.
Yeah, and incredibly dramatic. I said to you on Friday that a friend of a friend had taken their son from Colorado to Allen Road for the first time, and I'm thinking that on 90 minutes you're regretting that decision. I think on 90 minutes you're thinking this has been a long flight for a goalless draw that had very little to recommend it. And then on 92 minutes, you're probably thinking that's the best decision you've ever made. That is what football can do for us.
It makes my heart sore after 90 minutes of utter crap. Talking about 90 minutes of utter crap, Wolves 0, Newcastle 0, listless leggy Newcastle, because some of no creativity, no sharp edge in a game that will be forgotten by time. And by time, I mean by today. Wolves, though, your Premier League informed club, 5 games unbeaten in all competitions. They have officially more points than Liverpool in 2026. Raw, they remain bottom. Brighton played Bournemouth in a bright, bouncy alliteration South Coast rumble this afternoon. So that leaves Aston Villa 0, Everton Football Club 1. Did this really happen, Raw? Or did I dream it?
It did. It was the moment that Everton got in on the fun, Rog.
Yeah, I mean, why is it never us, is what I always say.
It was you. You beat Villa.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure how I feel about it. I mean, this game was insane in the membrane and really emblematic of this Premier League motif of unpredictability, chaos on any given Sunday. I watched it in Chicago's Premier League soccer bar of wonder, AJ Hudson's, with the Everton supporters group. I don't think any of us before the game thought that victory was even a possible scenario of outcome. Couldn't compute it. Villa undefeated in 11 straight home games before this one. Unai Emery wrote in the match programme, all caps too, "This match is crucial." It would have offered Villa a chance to go 4 points behind Arsenal. But I will say, Raw, I'm not superstitious, but Villa did seem to tempt fate before kick-off. Jack Grealish took the field, collar up, a little bit like James Spader in any John Hughes movie. The Villa fans, though, booed their former hero, Raw. When you're booing Jack Grealish, are you tired of life?
I was going to say, he who boos Jack Grealish is tired of life. I think that is absolutely true. He is... Surely we've reached the point with Villa and Grealish where you're just happy for him. Surely. Yeah, Villa are fine. Villa aren't sitting around missing Jack Grealish.
Yeah,
just be nice to him.
I wondered what Liam Rossini would say as he watched it. He probably just turned to his team and let's say, "Oh, look, the eyes are the windows to the soul."
He'd look at it, Roger, and say that when you're booing someone, you split that into 2 in the English, and one is buh, and the other is ooh.
Ooh. So you're actually praising. You're like, ooh, I'm interested. God, amazing. Do you think he just walked around? It's like that old Peter Sellers movie, Being There, that he's just wandering around, just saying like wonderful childish aphorisms, and we're all, if a couple more wins, everything he says will just be projecting wisdom into it, and I love it. Villa, got to say, they had chances. At times, the second half seemed like a one-on-one between Morgan Rogers and Jordan Pickford. There was one shot, Morgan Rogers, who was wildly uncalibrated for much of the game, with Thomas Tuchel watching from the stands. But it's exquisite hook, arcing drive, which Pickford, I mean, it's hit with venom, flung his entire being out. It's almost like watching a goalkeeper fling his entire multi-generational familial lineage at the ball. It was a stunning save. Even more stunning now, 59th minute, Villa starting to look a little ragged. It's not a super deep squad. I think they're playing their sixth match since the end of December. They got Fenerbahce, they got Newcastle coming up next week. And in a stunning moment, no one saw coming, especially this guy, Dwight McNeil. We'll never call you shite again, Dwight. I was quite delighted that the Everton bar, lots of people were calling him Shite McNeil as if that is now his name. He arced a shot in on goal. Emi Martinez muffed the save right back into the Kenny Loggins danger zone. And Tieno Barry, who is so, his factory settings are just wild and incalculably snatchy. I believe in the moment the ball dropped to him, Martinez on the deck in front of him, I believe he must have said to himself, you know what, I'm just going to slap this shot out for a throw-in, because he did the opposite. He unleashed a deathly, almost an erotic chip roar. And it was as shocking as unexpected it came from him, almost as seeing me with hair.
I've been saying for a while, Roger, there's a player in Tieno Barry. You didn't believe me that he was good at football in Spain.
And there's a treatment that I can be getting in Turkey. Is that what you're saying,
Barry is a work in progress, but when they signed him, he was one of the most promising players outside the Big Two in Spain last season. There is obviously a player in there. It's just a matter of patience. I
mean, it's crazy. Unbelievable it's his third goal in 4 games, to be candid. Also, it's ridiculous how we flung him in to be our number 1 line striker. It's like taking a number 1 draft pick, a quarterback, and flinging him right into the team and giving him no experience, no onboarding, no kind of growth trajectory. The pressure on him, the expectation has been ridiculous, and yet he is delivering with joy. He posted a photograph of the goal afterwards on Instagram and geo-targeted it as Barry Park. So he's clearly loving everything about life at the moment. And Tieno Barry joy is a very naive, wonderful, effervescent kind of joy, and drink it in. So Villa, my God, this massive game, this massive moment opportunity, dead-legged, leaving a stunned Unai Emery to fire shots at his own front office roar in a Marescary and Marimery Glastonbury way. We are not a contender to be in the top 5. We're still not contenders. There are other teams with more potential than us. Everton win. Villa suffer only their 3rd home league defeat since the start of last season, which is incredible. I have to watch every single game at AJ Hudson's now. I'm going to come back to Chicago every weekend. Shout out to Lowe, a lovely man who I met in AJ Hudson's. I asked him, how did you choose Everton? And he just beamed. And he goes, man, I'm a White Sox fan. As if what that means, Rory, is that he already support one team that is shocking, terrible, and utterly devoid of hope. So I looked for another one that kind of matched it. That approach to life, let me layer in more misery. I just love that approach to fandom.
But it makes the highs worth it, Rog.
And this was an incredible, incredible high. Big love to everyone in this incredible football city. I do think a lot about the Tommy Fleetwood appearance on our show last month. A really beautiful Everton fan who I admire so greatly. He talked about how Everton fandom has given him an undimmed well of optimism. I think this was his quote. We're always just ready for great times. I hope you had a great time watching this, Tommy lad. But Raw, it's time to delve into our mailbag. meninblazers@gmail.com. Do the honours.
Dear Roger and Rory, long-time GFOP, first-time caller, and first-time writer. Loved the episode last week, particularly Rory's hidden talent at amazing voice acting. I'd agree with that. The voice of the proctor at unnamed university was sensational. Cambridge. And Rog, I've always enjoyed your Guardiola and terrible Spanish pronunciation, which I think is unfair, Rog. I think you do your best.
I do, but it is terrible. 2 things can be true, Rob, but carry on, babe.
What is your best soccer impression? Can each of you show us? And what is it about this beautiful game that emotions take over us? Make fans do this. I certainly enjoyed doing my Vinny impression after Barca's victory. Con Valencia y Vista Barça, Ander.
Oh, and I'd say I have many weaknesses in life. I could do a podcast about my many, many weaknesses. I do think impressions are probably in my top 5 weaknesses. I'm colourblind. I've lived in America for over 30 years, Raw, and I still can't do even an American accent. I can say like, hooray for Hollywood, like silly things, $1 billion, but I can't do, that was pretty poor too.
It wasn't great.
It wasn't. It was a 4 out of 10. So, Roy, you should take this one, bud.
I'm also not much of an impressionist. There are actually amongst the
Do you not
ranks
think of yourself as that?
Of Britain's journalists, there are 2 or 3 very gifted impressionists, but I'm not one of them.
Who?
I'm not naming names; it wouldn't be fair. I'll tell you later. I think I used to be able to do. In fact, I've got a guys for Guardiola. That's all you need for Guardiola. That's how you do an impression of Pep. So good. Good. But my Roy Hodgson I've not done it for a while, but my Roy Hodgson used to be okay.
You might have to dust that one off.
Difficult to play the game today, but it's nice to keep possession occasionally and then work towards a goalless draw. I think my Roy would be my best impression.
Is it really? That's a 5.
Yeah, but it's not a talent of mine, Rog. I'm prepared to. Guys, so good.
That's a 9.
But that's all I can do. I've only got 3 words. Guys, so good.
Sometimes mid-season when he's completely shattered,
Exeter City, so good. Guys, so good.
I think the only one I can do is a Scouse accent, which obviously I learnt from growing up. Can
you do a Cara?
No, I can't do a Cara. Cara's got the high Scouse accent, which is very common. I've definitely got a Scouse accent, but that high Scouse accent is just that octave of like unwavering dedication and surety in your own sense of wonder, which is like such an incredible trait of Liverpoolians and Mancunians, to be honest. Like, I'm remembering H, the rapper from Manchester, and both cities share this. He came on the show and we asked him to describe the essence of Manchester to the audience, and he said, if you're hearing like 5 strangers have an argument and one of them's got a Manchester accent, he's right. And that's that high Scouse accent is the Liverpool version of that. I can't do it.
If you go very nasal, you can go Neville. You can do Gary Neville quite easily just by talking like that. That's all you need.
See, that stuff I can't do. When people say speak through the nose, I don't have that ability to like isolate my organs, so to speak. I can do a pretty pissed poor Sean Dyche, but that's just like going to that place.
Do you know, I once did my Sean Dyche on British radio and I've never lived it down, so I won't be doing it again. But I can also do a bit of an impression of Sean Dyche. I'm not doing it.
I'm also realising in this convo, I'm so self-conscious in this moment, I'm actually just talking about them without actually wanting to do any of them, which is kind of like, Anders tells you all you need to know. I've done some research into this. The last thing I'll say, Raw, about why my cousin Richard moved to America at the same time as me, and he speaks like an American now, and why I still sound like genuinely I've just landed from Manchester Airport. I've been told, Raw, stay with me here, if you have a musical ear, your accent changes.
Interesting.
Like, so think of like Steve McLaren, the English manager, famously, who started speaking English like a native Dutchman after being in Dutch football for like 3 weeks, was it, Raw? I bet you Steve McLaren is not the idiot that he was made out to be in that incident. I bet you he's a musical genius.
It could be. I mean, I think we're all still very glad that Steve McLaren, when he was managing Jamaica, decided not to do the accent.
No, he does. He does, mate. He does the accent. He'll do the accent. The
problem is that it's one of those kind of. It's one of the aspects of toxic masculinity that if you do an accent, no matter how. So I can do a South African accent, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah.
But no matter how good that accent is, all of your friends are honour bound to say to you, what's that supposed to be? Welsh. Regardless of the accuracy of it, that is, you're not allowed to say, no one has ever told anybody else they do a good accent.
That's fair. The honest truth is I can barely speak English, Andres, is the reality of the thing. I love your letter. Keep writing to us. Send us your postal. We'll send you a patch, King Andres. And keep sending us your messages to meninblazers@gmail.com. I'll try and answer each and every one of them. That is it for today. I'm headed back to New York City this afternoon. We are headed to the Bay Area on February 4th. I cannot wait this for a quite incredible set of guests in a beautiful, beautiful live show to celebrate the World Cup coming and the Super Bowl. West Coast fans, come and raise many beers in our loving arms. Tickets are available in our show notes and on our social. But Raw, to you, you beautiful human being, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I think you've done very well to get through this after the Bears' defeat.
Mate, I'm still buzzing. I'm flying. I don't even need a plane to fly home. That's how buzzing I am, baby. This is Rog saying, let's not take a second of watching football together for granted, and courage.